got my laptop, got the power bank, got the memory, need to grab my passport, and I feel like there's something else that I need to get. Man, it feels like it's been so long since I've been able to add another country to this map. You know, with the pandemic happening, everything just kind of halted, all plans of travel and whatnot. And it feels so good to be able to finally go across borders once again for this trip.
I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture, which is all about combining theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. It's felt like a very long 2 years since the pandemic brought travel to a screeching halt, but after enjoying a number of shorter domestic trips, the time has finally come to travel beyond the borders of home and into international territory once again. This adventure spanned across multiple nations of Europe, providing an opportunity to enjoy new parks and revisit some favorites, all while exploring them with fellow members of the Buzzed Bars Coaster Club. While lying in a hammock at Castaway Cay in the Bahamas during my friends Chelsea and Jay's wedding cruise, I don't think I was fully prepared for how the world was about to change less than a week later. Nor did I think that that day would be the beginning of the longest span of time between international trips since I began to make at least one a year in 2013. As various places began the slow process of reopening, my travels became more focused on shorter domestic trips. But there was a point last summer when I found a really solid redemption for a flight to Amsterdam in the fall, and I started making plans to visit several parks between the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. Unfortunately, I realized I wouldn't have enough paid time off from work to cover that trip, and there was still some uncertainty about being able to travel abroad with various COVID restrictions, so I decided to cancel and save for another time. Sometimes though, when one opportunity doesn't work out, another one comes along. One of the first guys I met from the group of folks at El Stumble that would become the Buzzed Bars Coaster Club was none other than Larson. As we've interacted at various stumbles and through the Discord, there were a lot of discussions about past travel experiences and places we'd like to go in the future. At one point, around the time I backed out of my trip to Amsterdam, he began to ask if I'd be interested in a trip that went to either Scandinavia or parts of Central Europe. At the time, I was more into the idea of Central Europe, as it would have more parks that I've yet to go to. But then just before the end of 2021, he sent me an itinerary which had a blend of parks from both areas, combining parks I had yet to visit with those I really enjoyed. Needless to say, I was immediately intrigued. This itinerary would be shared on the Discord, and over the course of several months, people began to make their plans for coming to Europe, with a segment of 3 days connecting all itineraries for the sake of the Buzzed Bars Coaster Club's first international event. And a group of us continued into an extended portion where folks would stay on for various lengths of time until we eventually got to the final 4 who made it to the very end. So where all were we going on this trip? We started this itinerary with that first international event for Buzzed Bars, Stumblelandia. 3 days in southern Poland for Energylandia and Legendia. This is where we had the most people and was the one common thread of every itinerary. From there, our larger group would make our way over to Amsterdam for a day at Walibi Holland, and then fly over to Hamburg for the beginning of a 3-country road trip between Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, with stops at the likes of Heidi Park, Hansa Park, De Jour Sommerland, Farup Sommerland, Liseberg, Kolmarden, and Gronelund. Then came one last flight to Helsinki to visit Linnanmäki, Powerland, and Sarkaniemi to conclude the trip in Finland. As things moved into the booking phase, I was really excited to find out that Finnair was beginning a direct route the month before the trip between Seattle and Helsinki, and as a partner of Alaska, I could use my Alaska miles to book a business class seat with them. So my original plan was to meet up with Larson and a few others in Frankfurt with a direct flight from Seattle on Condor, spend a couple of days enjoying some extra parks before Stumblelandia, and then follow through with the rest of the itinerary before catching one of the newest international routes to my home airport. Unfortunately, there was a point after booking these flights where I thought I wouldn't be able to stay on this trip because of a potential work issue, so I ended up canceling those flights. Once I was able to determine that conflict was no longer an issue, I got back on board for the trip and never looked back. The downside, though, was that in the time between canceling those flights and trying to rebook, they were no longer available for points redemption, and thus left me looking for the best airfare deal I could find. As I looked out of Seattle, the pricing wasn't great, likely in part because of the higher demand for travel at the time, but my search would eventually turn to a trick I've used several times for international travel, including my last major excursion through South America, and that was to look to our neighbors to the north in Vancouver. It was here that I found a pretty sweet deal, where for just a smidge more than what economy would cost out of Seattle, I could book a business class flight from Vancouver to Paris, then add a one-way flight to Poland, and another one-way flight from Helsinki to Paris to make the way back to North America. Having the itinerary set and the flights booked, all that was left to do was wait for the start of the journey.
So the time has come. Go ahead.
Like that South America trip, I'd take a Greyhound bus to get up to Vancouver and back after the trip. The difference, though, was that the timing worked out better for this trip because I could catch buses the same day as my departing and returning flights, so I didn't need any extra nights at a hotel like I did for South America. It was rather strange to be sitting here at Everett Station at 2 o'clock in the morning, especially because I'm here often for work during the daytime. But I was really excited to get going once that bus arrived from its stop in Seattle. Given that I was effectively pulling an all-nighter after working the previous day, I'd be lying if I said I had no trouble staying awake for this ride. Luckily, I woke up from a snooze right at the perfect time.
So now we are at the Canadian border, just waiting to get out and talk to customs to see if we'll be able to go ahead and stay.
We just went in, spoke to the agent, and approved to continue. The streak of no international travel is coming to an end today.
The timing of our border crossing lined up nearly perfectly with the rising sun above British Columbia. And less than an hour later, we pulled into Pacific Central Station, where a personal monumental moment occurred. It has been a very long 855 days since the day that I set foot on Castaway Cay in the Bahamas. And I gotta tell you, I am so excited right now to be able to once again set foot on international soil. Well, so far, international concrete, if I'm being honest. Wait for it. Wait for it. Now I've set foot on international soil again. Since I had a few hours before my departure from Vancouver, I decided to reconnect with an old Canadian flame of mine. Hello, my sweet little friend. Oh, I've missed you so much. And with that quick Timbit love fest, it was time for the Sky Train to the airport. As we arrived, one thing I wasn't expecting to see was that Canada was still requiring masks to be used in the airports and on all flights. Luckily, I came prepared just in case there were any other potential places it would be needed while in Europe.
Trying to find the Maple Leaf Lounge since I have access with the business class seat that I purchased for my flights today. Gonna have a bit more time in Toronto to really enjoy the signature lounge there. So this will be like a little quick preview of the one here in the domestic terminal.
This Maple Leaf Lounge in Vancouver's domestic terminal was a bit more basic than the lounge in the international terminal that I had a chance to experience when I took advantage of a cheap upgrade for mine and Rick's visit to Taiwan a few years ago. But it was nice to have a more comfortable seat with windows that gave some great views of the various planes waiting to take travelers to various parts of Canada and beyond. While I enjoyed a bit of the lighter options that resembled what you would find in a hotel continental breakfast, they did have more choices to choose from on their electronic menu, which I didn't notice until it was about time to head to the gate for that first flight. While going to Vancouver isn't nearly as convenient as flying out of SeaTac, it's well worth it for the sake of getting to enjoy a business class seat, especially since all the Air Canada flights on this trip were on wide-body planes, including the flights between Vancouver and Toronto, which were aboard 787s. This meant getting to enjoy their fully lie-flat signature class seats for all 4 Air Canada flights on this trip. One thing that I do love about flights in and out of Vancouver are the views, especially of the surrounding mountains. Eventually, the time came to kick back and relax. The breakfast served on this flight was delightful, especially the French toast.
My flight to Paris is delayed by about 2.5 hours, and originally I was just going to go ahead and for sure stay at the lounge and hang out, but then I had this idea to try and make up for a mistake made back when I did the Great Canadian Coaster Run a few years ago.
I forgot the Vekoma Junior inverted coaster, the one known as Silver Streak.
However, thinking about it and considering how there's been all these travel issues around the world, I started to have some second thoughts about that. And so I don't think I can realistically do it and feel super comfortable, especially since I'm trying to catch an international flight. But it does mean getting a little bit more lounge time.
And this was a lounge worth having extra time for, as it's Air Canada's signature suite, their premier lounge for cash-paying signature class passengers of Toronto's intercontinental flights. There were multiple different areas that included some private spaces for a small group and a dining area that offers a 3-course meal. I spent most of my time in the bar area with the attached buffet. Their Caribbean jerk chicken sliders were particularly tasty. I also had a pair of local Ontario beers from their draft menu, trying out the Creemore Springs Amber from Creemore and Beau's Lug Tread Lager from Van Cleek. While I'm not usually a cocktail guy, I did take advantage of the offering and try the Gala, which mixed together apple Ciroc, Tanqueray gin, chartreuse, lemon juice, and a bit of honey. It was an interesting drink, although not something I would have regularly, as I do tend to prefer beer. That being said, I might have had to stop at those 3 drinks.
The problem is that I haven't really slept a whole lot over the past couple of days, and the more beers I have, the more tired I get. And I don't want to fall asleep and miss my flight, so I'm going to get up and walk around the airport for a bit.
Given how busy the airport was, though, this might have been a mistake, as it didn't really make for good wandering around the airport. So I thought I'd try the other Maple Leaf Lounge in the international terminal, but it was pretty slammed.
Seeing as how busy it's been in the airport, I have to admit, I'm kind of glad I avoided going to Canada's Wonderland, because I don't think that would have worked out very well. With all the foot traffic that's in here, I can't imagine that security wasn't slammed.
So I just found a somewhat quiet corner to wait until it was time to board the flight to Paris. Given that I had effectively been up since the previous morning, with only a wink of sleep here and there, I dozed off a few times during the meal service, which seemed like a solid indication that I was ready to take advantage of the single best reason for booking a business class seat on one of these long-haul flights whenever you're able to. And what an excellent rest it became, as I slept all the way until the captain announced that we were 30 minutes from landing. So while I missed the breakfast service, I did get to see the French coast along the English Channel, and a lot of the French countryside and smaller towns as we made our approach to their nation's capital. One thing I forgot to mention about this new itinerary with Air Canada was that the way I booked it gave me a pretty large gap of time in Paris before I'd fly over to Poland. So you may ask yourself, did Gary look into going to a theme park during this time? You bet your ass streaks I did. Thank you for watching this Coasting with Culture video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button below to see future videos here on YouTube, like these ones which you may enjoy as well. Additional content can be found at coastingwithculture.com, and you can also follow Coasting with Culture on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for announcements, previews, and updates. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care and safe travels.